Okay. Anybody have a house plant in their house that kind of looks like ours? Like it looks sad. Like yeah, you got a lot of them. A house plant that just looks like if social services for plants was a thing, you'd need to be called. Somebody, yeah, go for it. Somebody would need to, yeah, go for it. Somebody would need to call and would need to kind of report you because there's been clearly some neglect. Yeah. And now here's the thing. Some of these, he's just taping it down so we don't have any more of those issues anymore. Thank you, Eric. Give it up for our tech team that make the magic happen and and make me look good as best I can. All right. But yeah, sometimes the reason for the neglect is it's in that one spot in your house you hardly ever go to. Yeah? Anybody have it? Like this guy ends up being in a room that we don't get to go into too often. And out of sight, out of mind. Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind. So come on now. But then some of y'all, let's just be honest in church. Yes? Sometimes that plant is right there in the living room that you sit for hours and hours. And that plant is just sitting there crying out, going, "Do you not see me? Do you not care?" Like that's what, it's like, water me. It's been weeks, and you're just ignoring it, and you're neglecting it. And that's when it gets really ironic, because, again, you have no excuse. Right? You're just not getting around to it. Literally just neglecting it. You're kind of like, tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. And the truth is that whether it's watering houseplants or chores around the house, we all know what it's like to neglect some things around the house. Come on. Anybody? Those dishes haven't been washing themselves for a while, have they? You know? Anybody know about that one dish? The one you just keep on putting off? I was going to say, some of y'all just need to be admitting that you had that one dish, you're like, I'm not ready to start scrubbing yet. I haven't been working out enough. I'm not ready to do it. So it's, especially in our busyness, it's really easy to neglect. Yes? It's sometimes costly. You know, you bought that houseplant. How many of y'all know you're good at like spending a lot of money on houseplants you kill real well? Yeah. It's costly sometimes, but it's incredibly easy to neglect. And ironically, Scripture has something to say about neglect when it comes to the house. And no, it's not going to be verses that are going to go through and be like, "Be sureth to watereth thouest houseplants." It's not going to be a verse like that. But what it is going to be, it's going to be a verse in Hebrews 13:2, where it says, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Do not, what was that word? So be thinking of that poor house plant when you read that verse. Don't neglect to show hospitality. And in fact, it's actually the same word that's going to be used just a couple verses down in verse 16 when it says, do not neglect, thank you. Let's all try it out though. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices, which is fair, sometimes it is, are pleasing to God. And what's interesting is that word neglect, the scriptures weren't written in English, and so they had to be translated into our language for us to understand it. And so neglect is actually translated from the Greek most times as forget. Like it really is most often just, I just forgot. I forgot that you needed watered. I forgot that you needed nutrients. I forgot that, you needed sunlight. Sometimes that's I forgot to do good things. I kind of forgot to show hospitality. In the busyness of my life, I just something gets lost in the hustle and bustle of our lives. Hospitality in and through our homes, our church homes, group settings. Some of y'all, maybe you've had seasons where you've been exercising and practicing hospitality, and then you haven't because life got busy. You had a baby, you had a health issue, you had a Thursday that just kind of was funny, so you just stopped doing, hospitality, and then you just realize after a while, it's been like, oh, it's been a while. And it can even be the hospitality opportunities right there in front of you. Like it can be right there, the opportunities for you to practice hospitality, and yet you can be neglecting them. And that's why, friends, I'm just going to be honest with you. This has been a series that we've strategically timed right up to Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. Times where it'll be easy for you to go ahead and, one, be busy and too busy for hospitality. And two, times where it'll be really easy for you, though, to practice hospitality. That's right. So, I know, I think about these things a little bit in advance sometimes. So strategically, it's important for us to understand that we have these opportunities. And yet at the same time, we can all be victim of doing the very thing that Scripture tells us not to do, which is neglecting hospitality. And I wonder how many Christians realize that this practicing hospitality is an actual command of Scripture. It's not a suggestion, and as we talked about last week, and if you missed it, go online. We have them online on YouTube. But it's not a suggestion of like, hey, those of you who are extroverts, there's this thing if you want to do called hospitality, and it'd be really cool. Introverts, you get a pass. Or hey, if you're too busy. No, it's commanded in Scripture for us to practice hospitality, okay? Okay? In fact, I'll go as far as saying, we looked at this verse we're going to look at in just a second here last week. It doesn't just in the Scripture say, don't neglect it, which we already just saw it says, right? Okay, Romans 12:13 is going to go on and say, contribute to the needs of the saints. And now it's positive and says, seek to show hospitality. Which again, if you'll allow me to geek out for just a quick second, in the original language means to pursue, to chase down opportunities to show hospitality. Yeah? Y'all, I've met people, some of us in this room are possibly guilty of actively avoiding something that God has actually called us to go ahead and seek out. We are actively avoiding the opportunities to show hospitality because of different reasons we're going to get into today. But I want us today to see hospitality the way that God sees it. Yeah? I really want us to get what God's heart is for this thing and see our homes the way that God sees our homes. To see our church homes. That's what this is, right? A church home for many of us. See our church homes the way God sees it. To see these group gatherings where we can welcome in people into the groups that we're a part of the way that God sees it. So last week, again, this is a 2-week series, so it's the shortest series you can possibly have because you can't have a one series, right? So it's last week I titled the message Show and Tell. And again, it was really fun. So this week I figured let's just stick with the theme. And this week I'm calling the message, if you like to write down on top of your notes, I spy with my little eye. We'll stick with kids' games, okay? I spy with my little eye. Because I want us to see hospitality the way that God does. And sometimes Jesus just needs to help us see things better. Yeah? So there's this one occasion, in fact, where it was once recorded that Jesus got an invite to a guy's house. So guess what, friends? This is a hospitality situation. Yeah? So Jesus gets the invite to go to a guy's house. In fact, this guy is Simon, and he's a Pharisee, so he's a spiritual leader in the Jewish tradition, and he's hosting the party at his house. But then all of a sudden, this unexpected woman comes in off the street. And I was right, because this woman is known as a sinner in the community. What? We can only imagine. But she's known for it, and she's known as a sinner. She comes in, and as the story goes into the context of the verses we're about to look at in just a second, the story goes that this woman starts weeping at Jesus' feet, because they would lounge and his feet would be exposed and all. So she starts weeping and wiping his feet with her tears and her hair, and then she brings out this expensive perfume ointment and pours it all over his feet and is washing his feet with that. And y'all, it's basically a lot. Okay? Oh, come on, church, we're better than this. Can you imagine being there in the room that night and you're having dinner? I know there's cultural differences, but you would be like, this is different. This is, because, it's a lot. Everyone's looking at it, because why wouldn't you look at this? Well, no one's really talking about the weather anymore. They're kind of like, yo, it's her. Did you see her? Anyway, Simon starts judging in his mind what he's seeing. And Simon, judging in his mind what he's seeing, Jesus being fully God, can know what Simon's thinking. And so you have this awesome moment where Jesus decides to call him out. Let's look at the verse 44 now, jumping into Luke 7:44. Then, turning toward the woman, which I wish I had more time, but I'll just say, Jesus turns toward the woman and says to Simon, which is interesting because he's looking at the woman, but he's going, Simon, do you see this woman? See, I spy with my little eye. So Jesus goes to Simon, do you see this woman? And of course the answer is yes, because everyone's literally looking at the woman who's wiping some dude's feet with her hair and tears. Okay, come on. Somebody came in here today. I know we can have a lot of distracting things in church today. But right, like we've had all kinds of distractions in church, but we've never had a woman come in and start wiping somebody's feet with their tears and their hair. You would be, so when Jesus goes, hey, Simon, do you see this woman? It's a little bit, I think he's being humorous, because Jesus has a sense of humor. So do you see this woman? Now, here's what he's going to do. He says, I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. So Simon is happy sitting, judging this woman for causing a scene. He's happy to go ahead and do that. But then all of a sudden, Jesus flips this whole story on him, this whole moment on him, and actually calls out Simon's lack of hospitality by contrasting the two of them, Simon and this woman. Now, their traditions are foreign to us, and it's really good for us to always be reminded when we're reading the scriptures that it's a cross-cultural experience. Yeah? Like we are engaging not only a time span, but also a geography span and a cultural span when we read the scriptures. So there are some traditions that are going to be a little different than what we would have in America in 2024 and all that. But he starts, and I want to have us hopefully see these basic actions of hospitality. Jesus starts by calling out the dirty feet thing. So it's a practical need, an opportunity. And I don't know, do we have that slide? Is there one that says practical need, opportunity? No? Okay, I didn't look at my slides. So write down practical need, opportunity, because he deals with the dirty feet thing first. He goes ahead and says, at the most basic level, I walk in, and their feet would be very dirty because they had sandals that they wore, and also they had no plumbing. And so their streets were plumbed with what you would imagine plumbing takes care of getting rid of. So their feet were nasty. So what she's doing here is a very basic need of taking care of a practical need for the guest of honor, something that Simon had not done. Okay? Y'all tracking with me? I'm going to tie it all together. Then he goes ahead and says, hey, Simon, you didn't even give me a kiss, which, by the way, is not what you're thinking, if you're thinking what you're thinking. It's a warm greeting. In the Middle Eastern countries, a lot of them, and I've been to some of them, and it's just cultural. Instead of like dapping it up or pounding or anything like that, they do the kiss. And sometimes you got to do like a couple of them, and sometimes you got to remember how many you're doing so you don't actually, oops, okay, there we go. And so when he's saying you didn't even warmly greet me, you didn't even I came into your house, you didn't even give me a handshake. That basically be what it's like for us. And she hasn't stopped shaking my hand. It's kind of awkward. At this point, I'm kind of just getting, okay. That's kind of what it's like for us. And what it is it's the relational opportunity. So there was the practical need opportunity that was missed. Then there's the relational opportunity that Simon missed. You should have seen that opportunity to relate, and you engage in that, and you didn't. And then Jesus calls out Simon for not anointing his head with oil, which, just for the record, is not, and I looked into this, it's not a common practice in Jewish tradition for every single guest who comes into your house to be like, well, hello, and a little olive oil on the head. No, what it would be for your special guests of high honor. If you had if you had a king or a prophet, or if you had a really special person come into your home, it would be a way of saying, oh, man, I'm honoring you, and you'd anoint their head with oil. So I don't know if maybe the Son of God comes into your home, right? If this guy who is not just a guy who is a rabbi and has some following, if you really believed who he was, you'd see, and this is the third one, the honor opportunity. That there was an honor opportunity there for Simon that he totally missed. He should have seen it. He totally missed it. And this woman of ill repute sees it and does it. So the Simon story goes ahead and shows us something. Y'all ready to get your toes stepped on a little bit? Pun intended a little bit. The Simon story here shows us that you can even invite the literal Jesus into your home and still not pass the true hospitality test if you're not careful. He neglected to see, and seeing is absolutely key to good biblical hospitality. Seeing the opportunity, seeing. In fact, this is the one thing I hope you get from today, and this is what I'm convinced of. The simple key to hospitality is getting good at really seeing others. Good biblical hospitality is both. We used this term last week. I'm borrowing from Rosaria Butterfield in her book. The gospel comes with a house key. But radically ordinary hospitality, which seems like radically ordinary hospitality, is simply seeing others well. And so today our main verse, which we haven't even gotten to yet, I'm about to. Our main verse is going to tell us exactly what to do in simplicity. Here it is, Philippians 2:4. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. And I'll just tell you, I'll call myself out. This is not in its context a verse that is explicitly meant to be talking about hospitality. But it's a biblical principle, and it also happens to be the foundational principle of what makes good hospitality, which is biblical as well. Yeah? So that's why I'm grabbing and going hey, we're told to do this anyway, and biblical hospitality is this kind of foreign thing to us that we're constantly trying to understand and better appreciate. Well, great hospitality can be extensive, and yet at every level, it's always as simple as just seeing others and getting good at looking to their interests, which sometimes we neglect for different reasons. And sometimes we intentionally neglect it for different reasons. Reasons we're going to be getting into today. And as I promised last week, if you were here, today we're going to get hyper-practical, but I think last week was pretty practical as well. But we're going to get really practical today. And I just want to warn you guys, it's not going to be a long one, but because of that, I'm going to be hitting a lot of different things, and I'm going to be hitting them hard. And so I kind of am imagining myself like a trainer or a coach today, where I'm lovingly going to come in and just challenge us. So it's going to be a high challenge message today. Are y'all in for it? Okay, because that's the thing. Hospitality is critical, I believe, to our spiritual life for a number of different reasons, but not the least of which is because it kind of stretches some spiritual muscles that we don't always stretch other ways. There's something that absolutely gets stretched in us, which because of that ends up making the hospitality stuff sometimes feel super uncomfortable. Because how many of you love getting stretched, and like whether it's physically in the gym or somebody's like stretching you at work and they're asking for more than you're capable? How many of you love, sorry, we got a guy who's rubbing his pregnant wife's belly. You're getting stretched that way, there you go. But how many of us love getting stretched? Not really. So here's the first thing. Embrace hospitality as a stretching experience. Because if your home is for you and just you, then okay. No stretching required, right? Guests are coming. How many of y'all, if I were to tell you that you had no choice, guests were coming over to your house for lunch this afternoon? Yeah, exactly. How many of y'all just had a little bit of a panic attack at church? How many of y'all are immediately like, I need to go to the bathroom, and then you like go out the back door? Like some of y'all, it would be a stretching. We know about that because we have the moment where all of a sudden we've had people who, actually I wasn't planning. We had 2 years ago, this is one of our hospitality stories, where a couple who had just had a newborn on their way home, that crazy snowstorm in 2022, that came in like January. It was like 60 degrees one day, 20 something degrees, snow. A foot of snow. Well, they called and they were like, hey, we're blocked. We can't get to our house. And they live nearby us. Can we come to your place? Ended up being for the whole week. But I can tell you, that 5-minute time frame from them calling and us being like, absolutely. Click. Boom! And we went into high gear. It was a stretching experience because our house wasn't ready for guests. Anybody else in the room? Your house is not ready for guests. I get it. It's a stretching thing. It's a principle that we all get in different ways. When you go from inviting, when we invite people in, you want to have a bit more put together, right? When you go from going to a life group to all of a sudden hosting a life group or leading a life group, it changes the way you engage in a life group. The need creates the urgency to push you to improve or to do things that you hadn't cared to do before. You see things differently in your home when you're having somebody come over to it because you're starting to see through the eyes of them. Hopefully. You start to go, oh gosh, we should probably hide that, clean that, move that, rearrange that. And God is constantly looking to stretch us when it comes to looking to the interests of others rather than just our own. God is, I believe, always lovingly stretching us. But here's the thing. Stretching is often not fun. It just isn't. So, for instance, I know the kind of church I'm preaching to this morning. I know how stubborn you are. If I were to go, everyone, I want you to stretch underneath your seat and just go and stretch. Some of y'all are like, absolutely not. I won't sing when you want me to sing. I'm not going to stand when you want to. And I'm definitely not going to stretch underneath my seat. Anybody? Come on. No. And if I were to go ahead and say, all right, everyone stretch and grab the envelope that each of you have taped underneath your chair that's full of cash. Some of you are going, oh, yeah, I feel limber now. Some of you just got a new wave of dexterity in your life where you can you'll start participating because what's in it for you just got answered. And that's the problem, is sometimes we look at these stretching things and we go, what's in it for me? And that is not how the gospel story goes. And since last week we said hospitality is basically us telling the gospel story, you can't approach it as what's in it for me. That's not the win from hospitality is, well, what's in it for me? You'll get some benefits from it, but it's a stretching experience. See, my parents have a treadmill in their basement. We tried to get it from them a couple years ago because they don't ever use it. That treadmill, it may be plugged in, maybe not. I don't even know. But I tell you what it does. It holds clothing really well. It's got clothing draped over it, and it holds clothing really well. Something that was meant to stretch and strengthen them instead has stuff just strewn all over it. And that's the thing. I believe that your home and your home life, which is meant to stretch you and meant to strengthen you, sometimes just has a bunch of stuff strewn all over it. Your home life has got so much busyness and so much you in it that there's not room for God to stretch you. But I believe that hospitality is a way that God sanctifies us, because we take something that we could look at as ours, and we actually use it to help meet the needs of others. That we don't have to have, and I'll just, again, remind you, you don't have to have the perfect house, or it even be just your house. But we can so easily find things that are ours and go, oh, it's just mine. And God's going, let's stretch that a little bit. Let's sanctify and build some strength there. And then one of the biggest ways that it stretches us is point number 2. It is say goodbye to self-centeredness. Which, when you do a good job of welcoming others into your home and caring for the everyday needs of others, when you do a good job of that, it's a great way of saying goodbye to self-centeredness. Which is tough, because that's the guest we really liked having. Right? Come on, I liked the self-centeredness one that I had. That one was more comfortable for me. I liked having that one around. And it's easy to stay short-sighted in life and not see much beyond our own interests and our own stories. Come on. Like, it's so easy for you and I to be like, who else is going to care for me the way I care for me? Nobody else sees me, no one else. So it's so easy to do that. But there is a key relationship here, and I actually just now realized that I meant to have a paper and marker. So I don't have one. So I don't even know if we have these on the slides. But as self-centeredness shrinks, do we have that? Okay, cool. As self-centeredness shrinks, real hospitality can easily become more natural. And then the next one. As you practice real hospitality, it can help to shrink self-centeredness. See, I wanted to be able to draw this out, so you're all imagining it, right? You're working with me today, okay? Yeah. I got home late. Okay. As you practice hospitality, as self-centeredness shrinks, we'll start with that one. As you kind of go, it's not just about me, right? It's not just about me. You kind of go, I'm happy to welcome people in. It makes hospitality more natural. I want people to come in. I want to bless somebody. I want to let Diego have some good food in my house, because the boy needs to eat some good food. And as self-centeredness shrinks, hospitality becomes more natural. As you practice hospitality and you kind of do it God's way, it's a little bit easier to be less self-centered, because you start to really engage other people. You see other people. You're really getting to see God's heart for other people, and so it's allowing you to joyfully fall into the background a little bit more. Friends, it's so much more freeing to not have my life be all about me, I'm finding. And I continue to find. So as we see people and their needs, you end up oftentimes wanting to do something about it, right? Hey, come over. You need something? Come on over. You need some help? Let's just sit down and talk about it. And as you're doing something, as you're welcoming on them, it repeats the cycle. And doesn't end up, instead of that, as we're really caring for people, we actually start to pay more attention to them and not how am I looking and how am I sounding right now. Because as we practice hospitality, we actually realize it doesn't matter as much how I look and how I sound right now. It's about them. It's about what God's looking for me to do for them and in their life and all that. And can I on that note make a real quick clarification that's really important? Hospitality is not the same as entertaining. Hospitality and entertaining are different things. Oh, I don't need it now. Thank you, though. See, our tech people are really trying to show off today at this point. Entertaining is about you. And that's okay to entertain sometimes if you want to. But entertaining is absolutely about you, and you being Martha Stewart. You hosting the perfect meal. Anybody love to cook some good food in the house? Come on. Anybody excited for this week? You're going to cook some good food? You cooking the perfect meal, or you having the Pinterest house. Entertaining is about that. And there's nothing wrong with having a beautiful house. Yeah? Nothing wrong with having great food. Nothing wrong with having good interior design. But that's not the point of biblical hospitality. Hospitality is about blessing the other person. And so entertaining is about you. It's about you being a great storyteller. You having really funny jokes to be able to go ahead and get them laughing and roaring and, oh my gosh, he is so funny, she's so funny, and you being the life of the party. That's what entertaining is. And there's nothing wrong with telling stories. Yeah? Nothing wrong with having some fun activities that get people doing stuff that's fun at your house and all that. Nothing wrong about having a bubbly personality. But hospitality, though, is not about you. It's about the other person. And that's in many ways, an incredibly freeing thing, because that means it's not your job to feed someone the best meal they've ever had in order to glorify God. Yeah? Hospitality means you don't need to be a good cook, but you should probably be a decent one. Find one thing you can make. Be highly practical at church today. Come on, y'all. Find one thing you can make decently well, or find one place you can order from real quickly. But you don't need to provide them the best meal they've ever had to do this. Food should actually be looking to their interests and not just your own, right? The food you serve. But you are free from being a five-star chef. It's also freeing because God's not commanding you to be fascinating at storytelling or a hilarious jokester. God's going actually I would say sometimes those people who, when they have people over, are constantly telling stories or are constantly making jokes and they constantly are the one talking, that's a big indication that the self-centeredness has not been said goodbye to. They're entertaining. They're welcoming somebody in, but it's actually all about them and making them feel comfortable, because I would feel uncomfortable if there was awkward silence or if you're not laughing because I don't know what we would talk about. So instead, you're free from that. And some of you, that's really good because your jokes aren't good. You're free from that. You don't need to worry about that. You're free from needing to impress them. Just bless them. Come on. And often you bless them not actually by saying a lot of great things. Just shut up and be a good listener. Told you I was going to be hard. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying you actually have it so much easier than you and I think we do. Just be a really good listener, which we're going to go into in just a second. You're free also to have a home that is real and not in perfect white glove check shape. Okay? God's word doesn't go ahead and tell you that it has to be in pristine order. I'm about to make a balancing statement in just a little bit, so trust me, I want you to have clean homes. But I want us to be able to see the distinction between entertaining and hospitality. Because you can entertain on occasions if you so desire. Have the people over, dress up fancy, do the nice, really good food, and let them hear your great stories, and do that on occasion. But one of the biggest points of distinction between entertainment and hospitality is where the attention is focused. And if we mistake or replace hospitality with entertainment, we missed it. And maybe this is why some of us go, I don't have the energy for hospitality. I don't have the energy for this. It's because the this that you're talking about is not what actually God even has a grace gift to give you for. Like, God hasn't even called you to that. So no, you don't have the energy to entertain people because that's exhausting. But you do have the grace that God will give you to be welcoming and welcome them in. It may actually be a lot easier than you and I thought. Still stretching, but a lot easier than we thought it was going to be. Stretching us out of the mindset of selfishness, stretching us out of greed, and stretching us in different ways like that. But even if this is so important that Titus would be commanded by Paul, hey, if you're looking for spiritual leaders, they need to have hospitality. It's in the letter to Titus. These elders need to be hospitable. If that's the case, it's ironic that Jesus would have a story that he's engaging with a spiritual leader named Simon, and he's totally missing it. Simon is totally missing it because even though he invited Jesus, he hadn't said goodbye to self-centeredness, right? Simon's the whole time at the dinner party. Who's he thinking about? Himself, exactly. He's thinking about, who? This is my house. Who's she? Who invited her? What's she doing? She's drawing a lot of attention. Yo, did you see that girl? He's only focused on himself. And not only did that cause him to totally miss that significance of what that woman was doing, that Jesus would actually say, man, you're mocking that, but that's going to be told all over the world. Not only did Simon miss the significance of what that woman was doing, he missed all of these opportunities to actually practice hospitality because he hadn't gotten past self-centeredness. And Jesus said that in serving some people, now we are actually essentially serving him. So we should really tune in, and let's get to our last point here. Hone your skills of looking, listening, and anticipating needs. And these really are skills too. Like they can be, God will give you a grace gift where it's basically his grace that empowers you to do what he calls you to do. And that's really good, but you can also develop and sharpen those. And it's super important because, friends, are y'all with me still? Yes. In many ways, you look at those three things, looking, listening, and anticipating. In many ways, those are the most practical ways that you and I love others, which is, I believe, really important to Jesus that we love others, right? The whole command, what's the greatest command? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then Jesus goes, and the second one's just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah? Doesn't it make sense for y'all that someone would feel loved if they were seen and they were heard and somebody cared about what they need? Doesn't it make sense that you would feel loved if that was something that somebody was doing for you? Yeah. And so it's one of those most practical ways. What simple significance is hidden in some of the simple things we do when we actually practice biblical hospitality? It's amazing what miracles, friends, can happen around your coffee table, in your living room. What kind of God moments you can have as you're sitting there on your front porch. It's just kind of crazy when we do that. Because remember, the simple key to hospitality is getting good at really seeing others. So let's love people well by actually seeing them. By really taking the time to look them, and this is hyper practical, yeah? Look them in the eye. Like, make eye contact with people. Observe their body language. Yeah? Like, see, do they look comfortable, or do they look like they want to run? Or do they look like something's really on their heart? Slow down and watch other people. Y'all, I'm being hyper practical today, right? Okay? Some of us, we need to really, again, it's a progression. You cannot do this until you get rid of self-centeredness, because some of us really struggle, and I'm just trying to let you know what God has for you, okay? You ultimately decide what you're going to allow the Lord to work in you and how you're going to let him work in you. But if you are constantly in conversations worried about yourself, you will not have good listening skills, looking skills, and anticipating skills, because the whole time you will be so worried about yourself. It is so freeing to let God handle you and then let him use you to go ahead and love others well. I'm just telling you, like, I'm blown away by how sometimes it's like, did you see that person literally physically struggling to carry that? How did no one else see that? But if we observe, we can be loving, watching people with eyes of love that look for opportunities to serve them like Jesus did. Growing in observational skills is actually key to growing in hospitality. And then there are also listening skills. Like, how many of y'all know, like, I don't know what I'm going to say? That becomes a big problem. I don't know what I'm going to say. It tells me that your problem is that you're picturing the whole thing the wrong way anyway. That, like, what am I going to say to keep the conversation going? We've hit this verse a lot lately, but let me just remind us that James 1:19 says, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Hospitality is a perfect opportunity to practice being quick to hear, because you don't need to have a bunch of prepackaged, brilliant questions to ask them. So tell me about this one time when you were a kid that was tell me one of your favorite teachers as a kid, or, hey, what's one of the funniest places that you've ever gone to the bathroom? I don't know. That was one of the, I don't know. You don't need to be funny or quirky or offbeat. In fact, all you need to do is just go and talk with them about the things that are on their heart and mind. And engage them with follow-up questions that aren't you interviewing them, that are just you engaging with them. I'm telling you, friends, it's so much easier. It'd be good for a lot of us, many Christians, I believe, to find a book or a person and ask them to help you grow in communication skills, because these things help us in every arena of life, but it's so good in hospitality to be able to have the ability to go and engage with somebody and hold a conversation with them. Know how to do that, yeah? Know how to change a topic when the conversation, like, that topic's done. Some of us are like, I don't know how to turn a topic. Let's get coffee. I'll tell you how to do it. I'll tell you. Because I really believe this stuff is helpful in how we love people well. And then here's a big key, and I'm going to, again, give you guys some gold on this one. Ready? Be genuinely interested in them. And some of us, we have to work on that one. And I'm telling you, as a pastor, I get to meet a lot of great people who like a lot of things that I cannot imagine anybody liking. Is that okay for me to admit? Okay. Some of y'all have hobbies and things you're into that I mean, honestly, just start. Tell me more about it while I'm going to bed at night, and it'll help me out. Thanks. But I love you, so I'll listen to you, and I'll engage you. Not in a false way, not in a fake way like I care about it, but I care about you. And, man, it's so cool when we can be like Jesus and do that. And just go, hey, you know what? I don't need to have a million brilliant questions. I just need to listen and engage you on the things that are on your heart and on your mind. And as I do that, man, what cool things God can do. And I'm convinced that many of us, if we could learn how to have conversations like that, the social anxiety that is plaguing our generation and our society would be a lot less, because we wouldn't be so nervous about all that conversational stuff. And then the last set of skills I said we need to hone in on is the anticipating needs, right? And that's a really highly situational one. So I'll just say this. It's good for you when you're hosting somebody to kind of just observe and anticipate and kind of get to know. So, for instance, I'll just be real practical. When my mother-in-law comes over, I crank the heat up, because she just always runs cold. And then when my brothers come, I put the air conditioning on, no matter what temperature it is. It's got to be air conditioned because my brothers run hot. Like, seriously, if you have somebody over, do they need a blanket? I know some of y'all didn't think a sermon should. I mean, this is highly practical stuff. Grabbing a blanket, and if you're gonna have somebody come over who has little kids, and maybe you don't have kids. Like, we don't have kids. We're looking forward to the day, but we have things for kids all throughout our house because we want to have people over to our house that have kids, and we don't want to just. I asked Madeline, I know that one door has a lock. Can't we just put them in there and just, she says, no, you can't just lock them in a room. You got to entertain them. You got to give them stuff to do. So we love those kids as well. That's an intentional step to go ahead and say, I plan on hospitality for even the least of these, the little ones. Y'all, highly practical. If you have somebody over to your house for any more than 5 minutes, offer them water. Yeah? Offer them water. I'm telling you this because, again, throughout my experiences, I've had people who just needed somebody to tell them that. So I'm just telling all of us, not pointing fingers, but just offer them water. Hey, would you like any coffee or tea? And if you don't have either of those, get you some for guests. And help bring their things in if they're coming with things, instead of just like letting them figure it all out themselves. The question that we need to ask here is, y'all ready? What can I see or imagine are the needs or desires that they have? And this is something that I want to do as a church, yeah? Yeah, we're talking about church home. So if you see a new family you've never seen before and you're regular enough to know, I think they're new and they're coming with kids, you run the other direction. No, you go to them and you say, hey, I don't think I've met you before, which we talked about last week. I see the little kids. Do you want to go get a tour of our kids area and I could just show you? Because here's the thing. If some of y'all, you're new to Alive, did you know where our kids area was? Did you know? Whoa. Did you know where the bathrooms were? Except for that sign kind of helps you. But that's a hospitality thing, by the way, having a sign that tells you these things. But even at a church home level, we can be really practical in helping people feel at home. Because we've all been there where we're in a place where we don't know where the bathrooms are, and we don't like that, right? Where you're thirsty and you really want to drink a water, but you can't find any, where the coffee is bad, where anticipating those needs and knowing, how can I care for these people? We read it earlier. Hebrews 13:16 says, do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. We should be looking for different good things and ways that we can share what we have, recognizing these may be sacrifices, but that we can go ahead and sacrifice some of our comforts for loving other people like Jesus. I mean, it really is as practical as, and then I will move on and we'll end this thing, okay? But I just want to get into your business a little bit. In your homes, have some comfortable seating for people when they come over. And listen, you, at your budget, okay? At whatever level you're at, God's good enough to take us wherever we're at. But just have comfortable seating that's planned for people to come over. And reevaluate your spaces as though people were going to come over. Okay? And then if you have pets, and I know this is one of those sensitive areas because like we're not pet people and there are pet people, but if you have pets, more power to you. Just be aware of how other people are affected by them. Not only allergies, which is definitely something. Yes? Like if somebody's, ask them before they show up to your house. Because if they show up and their head starts swelling, you're like, oh, do you have allergies? You could have anticipated their needs better. Yeah? But the other thing too is like, hey, maybe vacuum your couch. I know, but maybe vacuum your couch and get the hair a little bit less there. And then also maybe know whether they are cat people or dog people rather than waiting for your cat to be all over them or scratching them, or their dog to put his face every place dogs love to put their face, and then asking them if they're dog people, because how many of them are going to be honest with you? And at that point, you're not, and I know I'm being hyper practical, but you're not anticipating their needs. Your interests are being more in mind than their interests. You're not here to like wait on them hand and foot, but I think the woman is more the example than Simon. And Simon just missed every opportunity to take care of basic needs. Like, oh man, like you look chilly. Do you want a coat? Or do you want a blanket or something like that? Or hey, this doesn't seem like you're comfortable with the dog. I know you said you're fine with the dog. I'm going to put the dog in the other room. You know, anticipating the needs. If I spend a ton of time, by the way, apologizing for my messy house to that person, guess what my focus is still on? Yeah. So be careful of that one. Because if you're constantly, oh, I'm sorry I didn't do this, I'm sorry I didn't do that, you're looking for the attention to be on you. But by the way, when it comes to that, when it comes to cleaning your house, and again, I've never preached a sermon on cleaning your house, but here we are. Make it a routine. Care for it in ways throughout the week and not let it pile up, and then it comes a lot easier. It'll bless you, by the way, and it'll bless others as well. And I'm telling you, it never ceases to amaze me how some of this stuff, incredibly insignificant stuff, like really, like whether you have the light on when somebody's coming to your house for the first time and it's dark, and whether you welcome them at the door, whether you have good food for them, food that they like, or whether these small, insignificant, unspiritual things can often lead for God doing amazing things in your home. I've been a pastor for a long time. The ministry moments that I've had in homes often are better than the ones that I have in church buildings. It's just, I'm telling you, you cannot imagine these soft skills and how important they are going to be. The last thing I'll say, yeah? Because I'm ready to end it. 1 Peter 4:9, I think it is, says, show hospitality to one another without grumbling. Because I know I said a lot of things, and I've kind of stretched us, and I've challenged us, and there's a lot of different things that could be said about this, but I will simply say, this verse doesn't exist for no reason. And if this verse exists, it indicates that sometimes hospitality is going to make us want to grumble. It's going to make us want to complain. I can't stand that person. Do we really have to have them over? We have to clean. Can we just not? Can we just do this? Can we just do that? Like, hospitality is going to lead us to want to, as we're pouring ourselves out, complain about it. But may we not forget that we serve a Jesus who poured himself out in a way that you and I will never actually have to do. And yet he did it without complaining or grumbling at all. He did it because he said, you know what? I love these people. For God so loved that he gave. That he created environments, and he came into those environments, and he cared for the other. I know I said it was ending. This is actually the conclusion. Pastors love to do that. Because it's funny, I was thinking about this week, that we have a shared experience, almost all of us do, and I don't even know many of you, and to know all of your stories. But how many of you have ever in your life sat on a seat that you did not know until you sat on it was wet? Everyone, right? I was thinking about it. I was like, how bizarre is it to have that shared experience that we all have? And it's just such a cool thing here at Live Church. We unite over Jesus and the fact that we've all sat in a wet seat. But we've all had that moment where you go to sit down, and then all of a sudden you go, and this is the reason why I'm mentioning it. Oh, and you're not saying this, I get that, but in that moment you go, oh, this was not prepared for me. This was the opposite of prepared for me to sit in it. This was not a seat that was ready for someone to sit in. And I really think that what a difference it is when we have these moments where we sit into a setting and a situation, and we have a sense of, oh my gosh, this was made ready for me. As much as a startling moment it can be when you sit in a wet seat and you go, wow, that was not what I expected. It's so nice to have moments where you sit and you have a moment of like, wow, this wasn't what I expected. I feel really seen. I feel really loved. That person isn't concerned about themselves. They're really concerned about me. And what a cool moment it is when we have those moments where we feel welcomed in. And how cool is it that we could do that for other people as well? That God would invite us to say, hey, use your homes, open them up, love people well through that, be good and faithful stewards of what God's given us in the person and work and example, obedience and suffering of Jesus, and go mimic that. Because hospitality is more than moral posturing. It's more than us just being good people. It's genuinely loving our neighbor in every practical way. And it's a way that really can change other people's lives. So I want to ask you today, what changes do you need to make in order to practice biblical hospitality as more of a way of life for you? That's the problem with a sermon like this, is it's incredibly nuanced to you in your life, but I would want to give you a little bit of space to challenge you, to ask you, what is it that keeps this sermon from being interesting thoughts? Okay, next. Because I'm telling you, some of y'all have a million excuses, like, oh, my house is too small. Doesn't matter. Invite smaller groups in. Or this or that or the other thing. We can have all these excuses, but I'm telling you, what practical changes do you need to make in order to go ahead and have this thing that God called you to do being done in your life? I promise you this. If you do it, God will be honored and glorified, and you'll be amazed at what happens from it. Can I pray for you? God, would you allow us this morning to be reminded of the way that you've welcomed us in, that you, in your love for each and every one of us, You welcomed us in. You invited us to be the people that you say, I love you, so come in. God, we are so grateful for your love. Would you help us to be people that would love others well too? That we would look at the story of Simon and we would see that it's possible to even do the entertainment thing and not actually do the biblical hospitality thing. So God, would you help us to learn what it looks like to welcome others in well? That you'd help us in even practical ways in our homes to get them ready for people. That we would learn how to look and listen and anticipate needs. That we would look not only to our own interests, but to the interests of others. And God, I just want to pray for every one of us in this room right now, because I know this is important. Where there's been hurt and pain that has caused us to feel like we are, that the self-centeredness is us focusing on the person that nobody else cares to focus on. God, would you meet us yourself and heal that brokenness? God, we're all broken people in our own ways, but would you heal any brokenness like that would actually be a tool of the enemy to keep us from being able to actually just engage other people in a way that's healthy? God, you're a God who heals both heart, mind, and body. So would you heal some hearts today? Help us to have creative minds to see our homes and our church and our environments in ways that we hadn't before, because we're looking through the eyes of others. Help us to spy where we're neglecting and we need to actually pay attention and seek and pursue. God, we thank you that you're the one who calls us to this, but you're the one who gifts us for it. So it's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen.